Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. I'm Kevin Armstrong, joined by my colleagues Alex Hobson and Peter Baracchini. We cover everyone's favorite team to love or hate, although it's a lot of hate going on right now. So we're going to spread the love with some Father's Day wishes to all the fathers out there. All the sons have to run out and say nice things to their fathers right now. You guys don't have kids yet, so I'm just going to tell you to run to your fathers and apologize for all the stupid stuff you did. And you may still be doing. I don't know about that Alex guy. Anyway, we got some insight too to Jason Spezza this week. Great. We all wanted him to sign. We all had our hands way up in the air when we were saying, who do you re-sign? And he said the big decision was up to his family, his wife and his 4 daughters, 11, 9, 7, and 5. And it gave some insight. It's been pretty tough in the Ontario region, as you guys know. But as a hockey player, his daughters have not been able to go out and see friends, period, during that entire season. No play dates, no nothing. So they had to give him the okay. So to the hockey players that have been grinding it out here, happy Father's Day to them as well. And I can imagine that Spezza's having a great Father's Day. So now there's another father that we need to talk about, Zach Hyman. And I was a little bit worried about this. He's got baby Theo at home. We've talked about this on the show. He's had some injuries. We were thinking, at least the other contributor on this show, the old prof, was thinking he's not going to be driven by money. I was a little worried that he might, because his career could be cut short with these injuries, and he's got a baby at home now, and he's got a family to worry about. It sounds like, from what we heard this week from both The Athletic and from Sportsnet, is Hyman's not coming back to Toronto. So, Peter, what are your thoughts on that one?
It's tough. It really hurts knowing the impact and the type of player that Zach Hyman is. I mean, I was also on board with the prof too. I was hoping that maybe Zach Hyman would be the kind of guy to, get his worth, but also maybe be in a reasonable range. And, with the reports of it being, north of 5 mil, 6, and I even saw maybe it was even 30 million over 6 years. That's pretty tough, and knowing how cash strapped the Maple Leafs are right now, it's just not going to work out. Obviously, I would love Hyman back on a cheaper deal, but given his age, given where he's at right now, and even though he would have had a career year on pace for 50 points, it just doesn't seem likely at this point. And I'm upset, but I'm not upset at Hyman. I'm just mad at the situation where maybe if we had that extra money, we could have forked it over, but it is what it is. And if he does move on, I just wish him nothing but the best, because he's a really great player.
Yeah, I think for sure we'd all wish him luck, but it is going to hurt in Leafland to lose such a character guy. But at the same time, Peter, I remember you saying you just can't get over 5 million. You can't go to that level for a guy that's wearing his body out like this.
Yeah, and especially the knee injuries. The knee injuries, I think, is playing a major factor too. I mean, had surgery to repair his MCL, and then he sprained it again. I know we talked about this previously before as a reason why I wouldn't go that far, because of that reason. And again, 29 years old, if you sign a long-term deal, that's a recipe for disaster, and you're going to have trouble moving that contract if maybe in a year or two, Zach Hyman isn't the Zach Hyman that we knew. So it's going to be, I hate to repeat myself. It's tough, but it is what it is. And the Maple Leafs are going to have to try and do some digging around through the trade market, free agent signing, to try and replace him, because that's their only option.
Alex, I'm sure you're on board with everything that Peter was saying there, but is there any way, or do you see any kind of roster adjustments? Because obviously we've heard lots of trade rumors, and we'll talk about them, but is there anything that you think the Maple Leafs should go to extremes to try to get this guy for 5, maybe 6 million for a longer term deal?
No, without sugarcoating, no, I don't think there's anything else the Leafs should or could do in this situation. I mean, you'd have to go through all sorts of gymnastics to make the cap situation work and bring Zach Hyman back. And Peter pretty much nailed every take on the head that I would have said about this situation. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's 29 years old. He's known for not known for knee injuries, but it's a pretty notable part of his career so far. He's had to deal with those ongoing knee issues. And, as much as I would love to keep Zach Hyman around, just like Peter said, I don't feel comfortable dishing out $5 or $6 million long-term to him, given his age and given his knee issues. And, even if the Leafs did do something this year to make the money work, is it still going to work 3-4 years from now? That's the main concern I have. Like, either way, you don't want to be paying a guy who misses half the season with knee injuries, $5-6 million. So, just like Peter said, absolute best to Zach Hyman. It's going to be really tough to see him go if he goes. He was one of the only guys that went out and actually gave it every single night, regardless of where he was. And it's going to be tough to see him go out the door, but at the same time, got to do what's best for you and your family. And it'll be tough to see him go, but best of luck to him wherever he ends up.
Next up is Morgan Rielly. We talked about this during the exit interviews that Rielly was wearing his YVR shirt. He was the only guy that said kind of like a farewell kind of message to the media, it seemed to me. He was the only guy that said, thanks, guys. You guys have been great, that type of deal. It seemed like a farewell to me. And he's the only guy that's really had to suffer through since 2013. He's been there. He's had the front row seat for all of the heartbreak that we can only watch on TV. Now I know, Peter, you're starting to piece together a Morgan Rielly trade piece. So take us through kind of your thoughts on that one.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been fully reported that the Leafs are shopping Morgan Rielly, just rumors. And obviously everyone is looking at the core four. That's going to be untouchable right there, given how Dubas and Shanahan have so much faith in them right now. Morgan Rielly seems like the only option right now. And if you are Morgan Rielly, if this is your time, too many times the Maple Leafs have had sort of their own rental and fail to capitalize on a return. If nothing happens this year with Morgan Rielly, similar to what happened with James Van Riemsdyk like a few years back, you would like to get some assets in return. And Morgan Rielly is definitely going to fetch a pretty, reasonable result on the market, whether it is, a first round pick and a prospect. I assume that's going to be, at the very top of the list. And I think the Detroit Red Wings could be in that range where they have a late round first, 23rd overall, that they got from the Washington Capitals in the Anthony Mantha deal. Maybe you could try and pick that, maybe even get a prospect like Joe Veleno and fill up that center depth. I even looked at a team like the Anaheim Ducks. Chris Johnson has said multiple times that there's a team he thinks that a player is going to come, major impact outside of the playoffs, an American team. Philadelphia has come to mind. I know we talked about Travis Konechny before and how that's a name that's starting to appear, but I like Jacob Silfverberg and possibly Adam Henrique from the Ducks, mainly because Henrique still can play as well as he did during the World Championships. But Silfverberg could be that Zach Hyman type of replacement that can make a significant impact on the penalty kill, second power play, top middle 6 minutes, and just an absolute force on the forecheck. So I think those are my top options at the moment right now.
You're shooting a little too low there, Peter. We should go Rielly for Trevor Zegras straight up.
or hey, you want to go one further, Rielly for Jamie Drysdale. I'm on board with getting Jamie Drysdale. So
yeah,
Alex, you were pitching maybe Brian Burke would get in on this because he did draft Rielly.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at the 2012 drafts, Brian Burke, I mean, he said this at the time, and he said this in multiple interviews and podcasts since then. He ranked Morgan Rielly as the number 1 pick in that draft, and the Leafs obviously got him at 5th overall. And yeah, that Brian Burke's always been a big fan of Morgan Rielly. And in terms of an actual trade going down, I'm not entirely sure what they would get back from Pittsburgh. I'm sure they've got picks and prospects that you could eventually stack up to make a deal for Morgan Rielly work. But I could see Rielly being a fit in Pittsburgh and reuniting that ever so prevalent Morgan Rielly and Cody Ceci pairing for next year, maybe. But no, but on a serious note, yeah, I mean, we know that Brian Burke is a big fan of Morgan Rielly. I don't entirely know if there's any merit to a rumor of him being involved in talks with Pittsburgh, but at the same time, I could see it happening because Brian Burke knows him, and I'm sure he'd be happy to actually get to have Rielly play for him because he was canned before Rielly even made his debut with the Leafs. So
the only one that I could think of when we started talking about this was Chicago, because I was looking at who has got the cap room that could bring somebody on. But I was talked out of that by Peter because I don't see the prospects unless it's a ton of picks or something that could come back. So, but at the end of the day, guys, I'm going to stay on Morgan Rielly for a minute, because if they're saying they're all in on the core four, that means that Shanahan, Keefe, and Mr. Dubas himself have got one more year to make this work. And are you going to get rid of such a good defenseman when this is your year? That this is it. Like, you guys don't, at least I don't even know where you'd have to be, but you got to get out of the first round in order to keep your job next year if you're staying with this. To me, I want to keep Morgan Rielly on my blue line if this is my make or break year. Don't you agree with that, Alex?
yeah, and I mean there are obviously a bunch of situations and factors that you could take into consideration when it comes to whether or not to bring Morgan Rielly back. I know later on in the show we're going to get some Dougie Hamilton talk, and if the Leafs were to lose Morgan Rielly and replace him with Dougie Hamilton, I think it would soften the blow a little bit. But you do make a good point in the sense that Dubas and Shanny and Keefe are all committed to this core four, and they obviously want to make that core work. The only downfall to keeping Rielly for next year is that in the event that the Leafs don't make a deep run, or God forbid, don't even make it out of the first round again, all of a sudden you've got Morgan Rielly as a pending unrestricted free agent, and you blew your chance to get any sort of value back in return for him. So it's going to be a tough call. I do think that Brass has enough confidence in this core four to keep Rielly around and make one more run at it, but anything can happen. I truly don't know what Dubas is thinking in terms of how to handle the whole Rielly situation, because he could go either way.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to Peter's piece on that coming up later on this week. So we've got some foreshadowing on that one. Dougie Hamilton. Of course, anytime a player is mentioned to be out there, of course, he's got to be coming to Toronto, right? That's how it works. Every
Always.
single player. In fact, I remember Elliot Friedman once said on Intermission Report that he is contractually obligated to say something about the Leafs every time he is on camera. And I think he was joking, but then I was thinking maybe there's something to that actually. But
I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We're talking Dougie Hamilton. You said, Alex, you mentioned that Dougie, obviously there's a rumor, because there's got to be a rumor he's coming to Toronto. He's $5.75 million right now. So, and he's not getting that money from Carolina because they said go look for a better deal then. So, guys, like, how are you fitting Dougie Hamilton on that roster right now? We'll start with Peter on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up perfectly. I mean, every single time there's a big name free agent, you got to say Toronto. I mean, that's what happened with Steven Stamkos, John Tavares, and even Alex Pietrangelo last year before he signed with the Vegas Golden Knights. Given how much that Dougie Hamilton is probably looking for, I don't see how you're going to try and make it work. I think maybe if it's not Dougie Hamilton, again, you try and explore the trade market, see what else is available. I know that even before the trade deadline, I know that there was conflicting reports between both Johnson and Friedman, where Friedman doesn't see Matthias Ekholm as a fit, but Chris Johnson was hearing otherwise, that Matthias Ekholm would be a fit for the Maple Leafs. So that would probably balance it out, where you have, TJ Brody and Matthias Ekholm as your first pair, Jake Muzzin and insert Timothy Liljegren and or Justin Hall as your top four pairing right there. And then maybe even rotating Rasmus Sandin on the third pair, rotate him up at the top every now and then. But in Hamilton's situation, if it's similar to like what Zach Hyman is asking for, too much money, I don't see how you're going to make it fit. Even if you get rid of Rielly's contract, like even if it's a sign and trade where you're giving him $3 extra million, Maple Leafs have around $11 million right now. You take $3 extra million off that in regards to balance out Rielly's contract. You still need to add in a bunch of depth forwards on the top or the second line, third line, fourth line. You have ELCs that you can probably use, but if you want good compete, you're probably looking at also Blake Coleman as options. Again, too much cap gymnastics for me. It's hurting my head at this point, but it's going to be really interesting to see that if they do go for him, if maybe they try to give him a hometown discount. I don't know, but that really hasn't worked in the past.
Alex, anything to add on to that one that could possibly see Dougie Hamilton in Toronto?
Well, first and foremost, I think the only way you're seeing Dougie Hamilton in Toronto is if you trade Morgan Rielly this offseason, because I honestly, I think, like, going back to what I was saying before about how the Leafs have options with Rielly and with Dougie Hamilton and like how they handle the whole Rielly situation going forward. It would be much easier for them to bring in Dougie Hamilton, shed Morgan Rielly's salary and get value back than try and work both of their contracts in for this year. Now, having said that, I do not see a fit for Dougie Hamilton in Toronto, if I'm being completely honest. I said something about this the other day. Going beyond what the type of player he is and the kind of money that he would demand, obviously Dougie Hamilton would help the Leafs. We saw the Leafs didn't really get too much help from the back end on the power play this year. Dougie Hamilton would fix that in a big way. And he's pretty good defensively in the sense that he keeps pushing the play kind of out of his own defensive zone. And he's good at kind of keeping the play in the offensive zone. So it's not really necessarily his play style that I think wouldn't fit in Toronto, but it's the fact that he's kind of known to be a bit of an introvert. And you can say all you want about how he's a Toronto boy and, you know, he could be coming home to play for a team that, who knows, maybe he grew up cheering for. But at the same time, do we really think that he'd want to play in an environment where if he makes one bad giveaway in the playoffs, his fans or a certain portion of his fans will try and fire up a GoFundMe to get the team to buy him out, just like they did with Jake Gardiner? That's the part that I have trouble comprehending right there. It's a sad truth, but Leaf fans have shown in the past, and obviously even just recently when they losing to Montreal in the first round, they can be absolutely reckless and relentless towards their own players. And I don't know if that's something Dougie Hamilton would be comfortable with. I'm not going to speak for him, but yeah, I feel like he's better suited for a smaller market, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. There is something in the back of my head on this, though, and it's because Hamilton is such an analytics darling. He's got some amazing analytics behind him, and we know that Dubas loves his analytics. That said, you guys probably saw the player poll that came out, and it had Victor Hedman, as the player said, is the best defenseman out there. His analytics don't always look the same, right, as Dougie Hamilton, but Victor Hedman is a guy that I would go and spend the money on. I'm not spending it on Dougie Hamilton. But you've got a GM that loves his analytics. So it's going to be interesting. It's always interesting. Interesting times are also here because I have totally forgot to say, if you like this show, you have to like and subscribe to this channel. You've got to follow us on the social media platforms, The Hockey Writers, and head on over to thehockeywriters.com and check out our articles under the Leafs tabs. There's also some new stuff up there from the longest Leaf writer on the Hockey Writers, and that's Mr. Andrew Forbes, who also runs Sticks in the Six with Peter Baracchini, who's a regular on this show as well, because Peter is everywhere. Actually, Alex, while we're taking a break here, you weren't on the show last week because you were at the arena looking for who's coming and going, right? So what'd you find?
Well, let me just say that when they say that Toronto is very, very conservative with what they leak to the media, that applies just inside the arena too. So I wasn't able to come away with anything, unfortunately. But I appreciate you thinking of me. I was trying my best to get as much information as I could, and unfortunately, it just didn't come to me. So we'll hope for some better luck next time.
We needed to take a break because this one's going to hurt your head a little bit. We got to talk expansion draft. I did an article this week, and I had to do quite a bit of reading and double reading, and it was actually Pete Bauer over with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He did a great article on the problem that the Blue Jackets are facing, and that kind of got my head wrapped around what Toronto is all about. So basically, Cole's notes version here is teams can protect 7 forwards, 3 defense, 1 goalie, or 8 skaters and 1 goalie. And to add to this mix, they have to make available 2 forwards, 1 defenseman, 1 goalie, and these guys have to meet the eligibility rules, which are a certain amount of games played. I believe it's 57 over the last 2 years or 26 this year. Long story short, while I was writing that article, the Leafs didn't even have enough forwards that they could protect 7 if they wanted. And then they got Jason Spezza. So I had to do a little bit of rewriting on that one. So long story short is okay. So anyway, how can we wrap this up? I'm going to say they're taking the 8 rule. They're going to protect the core 4. They're going to protect their top 4 defensemen from last season. And they're going to protect Jack Campbell. And they're going to expose Kerfoot, Engvall. They're going to sign maybe a Ben Hutton and hope that he gets picked up. And they're going to expose Michael Hutchinson. That's how things would stand right now. If they went the 7 way, then it gets very muddy, and it would mean exposing Justin Hall, which I can't see them doing. So, guys, are you with me on this one, or are we just at the beginning? Is Dubas going to be busy in the next couple of weeks?
I think you're certainly on the right track for where we are right now. But as we've all learned in the past, Kyle Dubas he's always got some tricks up his sleeve. So I'm sure that if we talk about this a month from now, we might be having a completely different conversation. But I do agree with you in this sense that I think they will go with the 8 skaters and 1 goalie versus the 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, 1 goalie. I think at this point, the Leafs are probably more concerned about just protecting their best players, period, over protecting a certain amount of forwards and a certain amount of defensemen. So I think you're on the right track with that.
Yeah, this one is going to require losing somebody as it stands right now. Somebody that's an impact player on the team. Last time they lost to Vegas was Brendan Leipsic. Oops. And that's a bullet dodged right there. But Peter, where's your thoughts on this one, especially when it comes to Kerfoot? Because he was the guy. Obviously, if he was exposed, I think he would be taken. But I think he's got some trade value too, that Dubas could probably get something for him and in return get something that he could then expose.
Yeah. Definitely think that maybe Kerfoot is a really great asset to him at this point. I mean, like Kasperi Kapanen last year, they didn't have a first-round draft pick. Can he try and reel in a first-rounder for Kerfoot? Knowing that Kapanen was a third-line player last year and he got that, I'm thinking it's a really good chance that he could do the same thing here. And even if he does bring in picks, prospects, whatever have you for Kerfoot, even if he exposes, let's say Alex Galchenyuk, Mikheyev, and Engvall as the 3 forwards, you still have other options there that even if they don't want to take a forward, you can still take a Justin Hall or a Travis Dermott. And I think most likely if he does get moved Kerfoot, Travis Dermott is the more appealing option if I'm the Kraken, to try and, build around the defense and try and get some stability. And because maybe he was in and out of the lineup quite a bit, he has a home where he could get regular minutes and play to his potential. So I think that, yeah, you kind of are on the right track with Kerfoot being very valuable. What happens after that? I wish I had like a magic crystal ball in front of me to predict that, because no one predicted the Kapanen thing from happening. No one's. I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole entire thing right now. I think in the past 7-3-1 was likely given where they were at. Right now, the 8 skaters and the goalie is the best option for them. As I'm just gonna put what Alex said. Yeah, it's interesting because even though I think we still know what to expect with the expansion draft, we're still trying to remember what happened last time. And even myself, I'm still getting way too confused with all the rules and everything. But I think both of you are on the right track, and I think Kerfoot does hold a lot of value as a major chip for the Kraken and even for Dubas at this point.
So when you're throwing out Galchenyuk, like a lot of their forwards, they're unrestricted, and some have RFAs too.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, Galchenyuk wouldn't even fall into the pile.
Yeah, my mistake.
But I'm just saying that that's the kind of crazy antics that we got to watch when we're looking at it. Of they don't have a lot of options, but I think it was just so brilliant that Spezza signed. And you got to go back a few months when he was put on the waiver wire, and he said, "I will retire before I play for another team." So he's going to be exposed. And they're going to call Seattle's bluff on that. If they want to call it and say, we want Spezza in Seattle, I don't think they will. And because number one, why would they take a 38-year-old guy? Number two, why would they take a guy that said he's going to retire? So that's a crafty move right there. Basically, they're down to one forward, one defenseman, and Hutchinson that they've got to expose at this point. So interesting dealing. I do still think that, that's my bet. In the article, I said that it's similar to what we talked about earlier, that maybe in a Rielly trade, something comes back that can be exposed as well, because they don't have to protect Sandin or Liljegren. So those guys are not getting picked up because they fall in those rules. There's so many rules on this, guys. So anyway, that Dubas and his great staff there, they're going to have it figured out, and they're going to, somebody's gone. The roster's looking different. So expansion draft, you got to have it in place. Here's the other cool thing to mark your calendar. July 17th is 3:00 Eastern is when you have to have in your trades. Any trades have to be complete. 2 hours later, you got to hand in your protected list and your exposed list. So that's going to be a big day. And here's another quick tidbit. And this is why Peter Bauer's article was so interesting to me. Seattle is able to grab an unrestricted or a restricted free agent. They have a window of 3 days where they could go and get perhaps a Patrick Laine and offer an 8-year deal. They can go after these guys, and it doesn't come with an offer sheet. They can just grab them. So it's going to be great. We're going to have to watch that one close. It's kind of exciting. And again, to all those disgruntled former Leaf fans, you give your jerseys to these two guys that need a new background, or you give them to charity and go and cheer for Seattle, because that'll be a fun franchise to watch and to be there right from day one. And the draft is July 21st. Okay, let's wrap up the show with our social media roundup. That's always, we try to keep this part lighthearted because you can find so much of the other stuff right now. You know what, guys, I got to say, I did an article on Maple Leafs are no longer a safe place that was preached by when Babcock came in, and they wanted it to be a place where players are appreciated and respected. And it's gone, in my opinion. That's what the article was about. Like, Mitch Marner bleeds blue, and he's been torched in the media. And Foligno bleeds blue, and he was torched. You got guys lighting jerseys on fire. Like, this is no longer a safe place. And I think that that's going to have a bad ripple effect, because really, who are you going to want? We talked about Dougie Hamilton earlier. Even if he did want to come and play a hometown discount, do you really want to come right now? It's a nasty place. And after I did that article, I realized that here we are 2.5 weeks later, and it's just as nasty and gross out there. So anyway, I wish I could put the filter on to being nice social media that I can only look at. But Peter, you had a great one to start with. What's your social media?
Actually, two. I actually managed to find one right now. So get ready for the double dose of funny comments. First one, it comes from our very own Hattie K, who also does prospect writing for Dauber Prospects. It reads, Gary Bettman watching a two-hand slash to the face go uncalled in the playoffs, and it's Lord Farquaad from Shrek when they're about to do that fight scene to Who Goes Saves Princess Fiona. And it's the lines where it says, some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make. So Shrek is a classic movie, has a lot of classic lines. That's a classic one right there. The other one I found was from the Hockey News, and it reads live look at Marc-Andre Fleury on all future dump-ins, and it's the episode of The Simpsons where Milhouse is playing goalie and he's tied up in net to try and make a save. So a little salt in the wound right there after, the game where he botched that or gave Anderson that freebie. So yeah, those are my funny tweets of the week.
Alex, did you find anything?
Unfortunately not, no. I will say though, I saw a bunch of pretty funny memes about that picture of Jeff Petrie during game 2 when his eyes were bloodshot. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Family Guy clip when Stewie breaks a blood vessel in his eye and it just goes completely red. Someone said that was Jeff Petrie on the bench against Vegas. So I don't remember who that came from. I think it came from Mike Stevens of the Hockey News, but either way, yeah, that's I don't have it with me right now, but that was something I saw over the past few days that I thought was pretty funny, especially since it wasn't an actual health concern on Petrie's part. He's all good. So
yeah, then we can make some fun of it. But exactly. I've seen the laser eyes coming out and your God isn't here and things like that too. With that one's going to be used quite a bit, I think. Yeah. All right, so I've got one here. It says, I'm a big hockey fan. Okay, then name 9 players. Sutter. That's on me. I set the bar too low.
Okay, that was good. That was good.
And obviously we've seen the one too with Bettman on the phone and the ref on the other line, and Bettman saying you're making it too obvious, and the ref is wearing a Vegas mask and says, "What do you mean?" So. Yeah, Montreal's got their work cut out for them to get to the Stanley Cup final. That's for sure.
There was also another one that I saw where you all remember when Alan Walsh posted the picture of Marc-Andre Fleury with the dagger going in his back last postseason. Yeah. Someone actually wrote Fleury on the dagger in Fleury's back after that goal, and I can't remember who tweeted that picture out. But man, again, a bad gaff, and that's got to really hurt for Fleury right now. I mean, how bad do you think he feels? It's just awful.
That game was in the bag.
It was.
Oh, poor Montreal fans. We feel for them, don't we?
Oh, yeah. They have it so easy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're playing the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, you've got it easy regardless.
There you
go. A little self-hatred here.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap it up. Great show today. Lots of food for thought as we go forward, because there's nothing to talk about on the ice when it comes to our team, but you know that in the next week, there's going to be more names talked about, more trade rumors. So I'll put it on right now. We're going to talk about in what world would Mitch Marner be traded, and in what world would, we got to say it, Jack Eichel be in Toronto. There's a name that's out there, so why not, right? Because that's what we do. Thanks so much for joining us for the Maple Leafs Lounge. We'll see you next week to talk about those topics and so much more.